I've
The
had
fluorescent
enough of
lights
your
buzzed faintly
insubordination.
above the
When I
glass-walled
give an
conference
order,
room.
I expect it to
Zara
be
stood at the
followed
end of
without
the long
question.
oak table, files clutched against her
I've had
chest.
enough of your excuses.
The crisp
This
white
project
collar of
is
her
a
blouse
disaster
pressed
because
against
of
her
you,
throat
and
like
I
a
expect
noose.
you to fix it
Around her, the
immediately.
boardroom was already
God, look at
filling.
his face.
Pressed suits, polished shoes, a low hum of practiced laughter. The CEO walked in last. Robert. Tall, silver-haired, the kind of man who never raised his voice because his power already filled the room. His eyes swept past her as though she were part of the furniture. "Coffee," he said without looking. The word wasn't aimed at anyone in particular, but every head turned to Zara. She was the only black woman in the room. She didn't move. She wasn't the assistant. She was the interim head of operations. The silence that followed was surgical, clean, slicing, deliberate. Robert's jaw tightened, his gaze finally settling on her. "I said coffee. You're standing there like you belong at this table." The air thinned. Zara's pulse beat in her ears. She caught the smirk of a junior exec. Someone cleared their throat. She opened her mouth, steady but low. "I do belong at this table." A small, cold smile spread across Robert's face. "Not for long." The words hung like smoke. Cameras blinked red from the corners. Her fingers curled around the folder until the paper crumpled. In that moment, she understood. This wasn't an accident. It was a warning. The door behind her clicked shut. The glass walls reflected everything back at her. The polished shoes, the silver water pitchers, the predatory stillness that always settled just before Robert entered the room. Zara adjusted the lapel of her blazer, the crisp black fabric pressing against her throat. She had memorized every line of the quarterly report. She had fought too long to let a man like Robert unmake her with a single look. The door opened. He didn't look at her. He didn't need to. "Coffee," Robert said, eyes fixed on the presentation screen. A faint rustle ran through the room. No one else moved. Zara's jaw clenched. "I'm not, then what are you standing for?" His voice was soft, not loud, but it scraped the air clean. Laughter, controlled, uneasy, fluttered across the room like moth wings. She sat down slowly. The seat creaked too loud in the silence. Robert walked to the head of the table. "Let's begin. Interim head of operations will read the performance summary." Her title delivered like an insult. She stood again, spine rigid, and opened her folder. "Quarter 2 shows a 7%, Robert cut across her. "Let's skip the filler. We need real insight." She forced her voice steady. "This is the insight." He smiled. "No, this is your opinion." Someone snickered. Someone else coughed. Zara swallowed hard. Her fingers itched to slam the folder shut. He leaned back, eyes lazy, voice velvet. "You should focus on support tasks. Leadership requires a certain presence." Every word was a blade wrapped in silk. She felt the weight of years pressing down. The late nights, the ignored promotions, the whispered comments about her attitude. She felt the cameras blinking in the corners. She felt him watching. The performance graph glowed blue on the screen behind her. Solid, undeniable. Facts didn't matter here. Power did. Her voice cracked just slightly, but she didn't look away. "You brought me here to speak." "I'll speak." Robert tilted his head, amused. "Then make it worth my time." The room wasn't neutral. It pulsed with quiet approval of his cruelty. With the safety of their silence, Zara realized that this meeting wasn't about performance. It was a stage, a message, a warning. She finished the report without stumbling. When she sat down, she could still feel the imprint of every stare burning into her skin. Robert's smile lingered like a bruise. And in that silence, beneath the fluorescent lights, Zara made a decision. She would burn this stage to the ground. The corridor smelled of elevator metal and lemon cleaner. Zara walked with the dossier pressed to her chest, each step measured. Voices spilled from an open office 2 doors down, low, sharp, lubricated by private certainty. She slowed. "You saw her?" A voice hissed. "Standing like that. Who does she think she is?" "Hard to believe they promoted her," another replied. "Someone's playing diversity theater." Zara's fingers tightened. Her name was never used in private without contempt. She moved on, palms burning. Marissa caught up with her by the stairwell, a hand on her elbow. "You okay?" Zara let out a breath. "I'll be fine." Marissa's eyes flicked to the open office, then to Zara's face. "They were talking about you." I heard. Zara's voice was flat. What else is new? Marissa's mouth pressed into a thin line. Robert asked me to lunch. For what? To talk company cohesion. He said he was worried about how people perceive leadership. Zara's laugh was dry. Perceive leadership? That's what he calls bullying. Marissa studied her. He suggested you step down from interim. You said nothing? Zara demanded. I tried. Marissa's voice dropped. He told me I was being emotional. Zara shut her eyes. Of course he did. Later in Robert's office, blinds sliced the light. Robert sat behind an expanse of glass, hands steepled. He wore a neutral expression like armor. Zara, he said. Sit, she stood. Dossier against her hip. What did you want? We need to talk about your role. Our investors are nervous. They want stability. Stability? She felt the word like a slap. Your stability doesn't require my removal. It's not removal, he said. A transition. Perception matters. The board thinks an interim could be mistaken for permanent. You're asking me to step aside for optics. Her voice was coiled. I'm protecting you, he said. A public campaign would hurt your brand. There are ways to pivot, strategic secondments. You mean exile? He narrowed his eyes. I'm offering a solution. You want me to accept demotion so the company doesn't feel uncomfortable? Her laugh had no humor. You want me to vanish? A secretary entered. Mr. Langford, the investor call is on line 3. He nodded without looking away. We can continue later. Zara closed the distance to the desk. You humiliated me in front of the board. He shrugged. I asked a reasonable question. You responded poorly. You told them I should focus on support tasks. You said I lacked presence. I didn't say that. Ms. Adeyemi, you're reading intent where there is none. You're setting me up. She said it quiet and cold. We must avoid distractions, he replied. Consider the company. Consider your career. I can arrange a role that's less public. You can arrange my removal. Her voice cut. I won't make it easy. He smiled, small and practiced. You can choose the graceful path or we make this a mess. She left. The hallway felt narrower. People pretended not to notice. She felt the eyes point away. In the stairwell, she breathed until the rhythm slowed. Inside her dossier were project timelines, vendor negotiations, cost savings she'd engineered, proof, a map of those who would lie for convenience. Marissa texted, Are you coming to the review committee tonight? She typed back, I will be there. Zara folded her shoulders, dossier under her arm, and walked toward the room where quiet conspiracies were plotted. She did not rush to anger. She calcified it into intent. In the parking garage, she pressed her palms to the hood and ran through the quarter's decisions. She remembered the vendor negotiations she'd smoothed, the cost-savings spreadsheet that had kept teams employed, the late nights rewriting pitch decks. Those facts were lodged in files, not gossip. Her phone buzzed with her mother's name. She stared at it and set it face down. Personal maintenance would wait. This was corporate survival. She sketched a plan. Document every interaction, save emails, note dates, collect witnesses. Relying on HR felt like trusting the mapmaker who'd already redrawn the borders. She would create a paper trail so tight it could not be folded away. Marissa waited at the stairwell, silent, until Zara stepped into view. You sure? She asked. Zara met her gaze. They're lining up to erase me. I'm not going quietly. Marissa's grip was brief and fierce. We'll help. Zara let the promise land. The building hummed indifferent. Inside, she set the first pieces in motion. The cafeteria was built to look open, bright, transparent, floor-to-ceiling glass, warm wood panels, small potted plants on every table. But the moment Zara walked in, it shrank. Conversations dimmed a notch. Eyes skated past her face and found anything else to rest on. Phones, coffee cups, the horizon. She moved to the coffee station. A junior analyst stepped aside too fast, muttered something about a meeting, and fled. The machine hissed in the silence. Marissa joined her, tray in hand. They're already whispering. Zara stirred her coffee without looking up. Of course they are. Across the room, Malik, senior strategist, someone who'd once shared late nights over campaign decks, lifted his eyes toward her, then lowered them like it burned. Zara crossed the space and stopped at his table. Malik. He froze with his fork halfway to his mouth. Zara, hey. You were in the boardroom, she said. You heard everything, he swallowed. Yeah. You said nothing. It wasn't my place, he whispered. It was everyone's place, she said, voice low, controlled. You let him humiliate me. He shifted in his chair. I can't afford to, she leaned forward. Neither could I. The silence was thick. Malik's eyes flicked to the walls where a camera blinked softly. You should let this go. Let it go, Zara repeated. Of course. She turned, leaving him in his quiet compliance. By the elevators, Amanda, mid-level HR liaison, caught her elbow. Zara, can we talk? Zara stopped. Now? Quickly. Amanda lowered her voice. Off the record. People are uncomfortable. Because I refused to get coffee? Because of how it looked. Zara let the bitterness rise without softening it. How it looked to whom? Amanda glanced around, lowered her voice further. You're being perceived as confrontational. That's the word, Zara said. Confrontational. Always easier than truthful. Amanda's jaw tightened, but she didn't disagree. I'm just saying, be careful. Careful doesn't protect me, Zara said. It protects him, Amanda exhaled. Then be smart. The elevator opened. Zara stepped inside and let the doors cut the conversation clean. On the 12th floor, the air smelled like printer ink and cold ambition. She walked to Malik's corner. Not Malik this time, but Renee, legal counsel. Someone who, once upon a time, had toasted her promotion. Renee pretended to type as Zara approached. I need 5 minutes, Zara said. Renee kept her eyes on the screen. Now's not great. It won't get better. Renee's fingers hovered over the keyboard. Then she sighed. Okay. In the small meeting pod, Zara leaned against the wall. You know what's happening. Renee avoided her gaze. You know how this place works. Yes, which is why I'm not asking for loyalty. I'm asking for clarity. Renee finally met her eyes. He's building a narrative. Whispers about you being volatile, uncooperative. They want you to resign so they don't have to push. Zara's voice flattened. And you? I have a mortgage, Renee said. 2 kids. You mean you'll stay quiet? Renee didn't answer. She didn't need to. Marissa found Zara hours later on the rooftop terrace, the city laid out like cold machinery below. They're scared, Marissa said softly. They should be, Zara answered. Not of me. Of what happens when silence isn't enough. Marissa wrapped her arms around herself. What's your next move? Document everything, Zara said. Force their hands. Make silence dangerous. The wind carried away their words, but the weight remained. Below them, the building thrummed with the quiet rhythm of complicity. Inside it, Zara began threading a noose, not of revenge, but of truth, tight and patient. Zara sat alone in the dim glow of her office monitor, the cursor blinking over an empty email draft. The building was silent now. No laughter, no corridor chatter, only the distant hum of the HVAC system. It was the hour when power forgot to pretend to be polite. She clicked through her inbox. The latest feedback summaries from management hung like static on the screen. Words repeated, unapproachable, volatile, aggressive tone, poor fit for leadership culture. None of these had appeared in her reviews 3 months ago. She opened the attached threads. Buried lines appeared. Comments from Robert copied to board members, HR, senior staff. She seems increasingly difficult to manage. Not sure she's ready for real leadership responsibility. We need someone more stable in that seat. Every sentence was a scalpel. She opened the internal scheduling server, cross-referencing timestamps. The comments had started 2 weeks before the public humiliation in the boardroom. This wasn't fallout. It was groundwork, a knock. Light, hesitant. It's me, whispered Darius, IT support, a quiet man who had once helped her set up an encrypted folder during the pandemic years. Zara opened the door. Why are you here this late? He stepped in holding a small drive. Because I saw what they're doing. She closed the door behind him. Explain. They've been flagging your internal activity for months, he said. Accessing your email logs, copying your private drafts. Robert's assistant sent an unofficial archive to the board. Her stomach tightened. They're surveilling me? Technically, it's company property, Darius said. But the way they're doing it isn't standard. They're building a paper trail to make your removal look inevitable. He placed the flash drive on her desk. I'm not supposed to give you this. What's on it? Internal chatter. Redacted meeting notes. Draft memos. You should see what they're saying when you're not in the room. Zara stared at the small piece of plastic like it was a loaded gun. Why are you helping me? Darius's jaw clenched. Because I've seen him do this before, to others. It doesn't end well unless someone fights back. She slid the drive into the USB port. File after file spilled open. Redacted summaries, POEtic threads, perception of leadership mismatch. Concerns about temperament. Back-channel references. She whispered, "They wrote my downfall before I had a chance to fail." Darius glanced at the hallway. "Be careful. If they find out you have this, I won't let them bury me," she cut in. When he left, Zara copied everything twice. One folder went to a secure cloud backup. Another went to a private drive she'd bought the day she joined the company. Years of preparation, finally justified. The next morning, the glass corridors looked different. The same polished surfaces, the same silent smiles, but she could see the machinery beneath. The soft greetings, the polite lies. She found Marissa at the elevator bank. "Come with me." Marissa frowned but followed. In Zara's office, the monitor glowed with open threads. Zara scrolled through them silently. Marissa read, face tightening with every line. "They called you a risky cultural fit, Jesus." "They're writing the ending to my story," Zara said. "I'm rewriting it." Marissa shook her head slowly. "This is coordinated." "Yes. Then we can't play nice." Zara clicked the mouse. "We don't need nice. We need truth." 2 hours later, during the department sync, Robert entered with his usual measured calm. Zara sat opposite him. Around them, team leads scribbled, shifted in their seats, pretended to breathe quietly. "Zara," Robert said smoothly, "would you mind stepping outside with me after this?" "No," she said evenly. "We can talk here." The silence that followed was surgical. His eyes narrowed slightly. "That's not how we handle these conversations. It's how I'll handle this one." He smiled the way only men accustomed to control smile. "Suit yourself," she let him run the meeting. Watched him talk about quarterly targets. Watched the way every head nodded at the right moments. Watched the way silence became complicity. When he wrapped up, she didn't move. Robert turned toward her. "Something to add?" "Yes." Her voice was steady. "I've reviewed the internal communications regarding my leadership, and the language used to undermine me." The table stiffened. Someone coughed. Robert tilted his head, the picture of mild surprise. "I don't know what you're referring to." "I think you do," she said. He placed his palms flat on the table. "Be very careful, Zara." Her lips curved, not a smile, not defiance, just acknowledgement. "I am." The tension cracked like dry wood. She rose and walked out first. Behind her, the whispers followed. But this time she didn't hear fear in her own steps. Only precision. A line had been drawn. She wasn't defending herself anymore. She was going on the offensive. The company's annual innovation gala dripped with glass, gold, and performance. Waiters in black vests moved between clusters of executives holding champagne flutes. Light pooled in white circles on the marble floor, the air saturated with the sound of practiced networking. Zara stood near the back, black suit sharp, badge clipped at her waist. She wasn't here for celebration. She was here to watch a man perform power. Robert had taken the stage 15 minutes in. He spoke like he always did, calm, rehearsed, a tone meant to sound fatherly. "Innovation," he said, "comes from knowing who belongs where." Applause. She felt Marissa's presence at her shoulder. "He's baiting you," Marissa whispered. "I know," Zara replied. Robert continued, "We are proud of every member of this team, even those still learning their place in leadership." Eyes shifted. Subtle, but she felt the heat of it slide toward her. He gestured toward the crowd, a benevolent smile curving his mouth. "It takes a certain presence to lead. Some have it. Some support it, laughter, nervous, complicit." Zara's hands stayed locked behind her back. She didn't step forward. "Not yet," Robert raised his glass. "To a future where leadership reflects the strength of this company. Not every seat is meant for every person." That last line landed like a blade. No one needed him to name her. He already had. The applause rose again, washing over the room like static. Zara walked forward, her heels cutting through the noise. The crowd parted without realizing it. She stopped in front of the stage. The microphone was close enough to catch her voice if she wanted it. Her words came measured, low, clear. "Not every man who holds a seat deserves it." The silence was instant. All the noise evaporated in a single exhale. Robert tilted his head, smiling as though humoring a child. "Ms. Adiemi," he said smoothly, "tonight's for celebration. Let's not—" She didn't give him the space. "You've spent months writing my exit," she said. "But if you're going to tear someone down, at least do it without hiding behind a toast." A few people shifted. Cameras flashed. Someone's phone began to record. Robert laughed lightly, but it didn't reach his eyes. "You're emotional." Zara's voice didn't waver. "No, I'm done being quiet." The weight of the room swung hard. Not in her favor, not yet. But something in Robert's posture cracked for the briefest second. His grip on the mic tightened. His smile froze. He leaned slightly forward. "I hope," he said, still soft, "you understand the consequences of this little performance." "I understand them better than you think," Zara replied. She turned before he could respond. She didn't wait for applause. She didn't need permission. She stood alone in the bathroom 10 minutes later. Cold water dripped down her wrists. Her reflection stared back at her. Rigid jaw, trembling breath she wouldn't let escape. Marissa burst in. "Zara, everyone's talking." "I know, he's furious." "Good." Her voice was steady now. "He should be." Marissa leaned against the sink. "You crossed a line." "He drew it," Zara answered. "I just stepped over it." Back in the parking lot, the cold night pressed close. Zara leaned against her car, eyes on the building's glowing windows. Robert had spent years orchestrating how she'd be remembered. An ambitious black woman who reached too far, spoke too loud, wanted too much. But from this point forward, every word he spoke would land on a room that had seen the first crack. She wasn't a problem to be removed anymore. She was a problem that would fight back. The hum of the aircraft softened as the cabin lights dimmed, creating a calm atmosphere. But for flight attendant Sophie, her heart raced. She had spent the past hour trying to ignore the burning regret twisting in her chest. At the front of the cabin, the captain's voice came over the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, we'd like to welcome a very special guest on board. Please give your attention to Mr. Marcus Hill, CEO of Skylink Airlines." A stunned silence fell over the cabin. Every passenger who had seen Sophie's behavior earlier now turned their gaze toward the man she had disrespected. Marcus, the black man she had refused to serve, slowly rose from his seat in first class, straightening his crisp suit. He didn't need to say a word. His presence alone spoke volumes. Sophie's knees almost buckled. She whispered to herself, "Oh my God, what have I done?" Her earlier arrogance vanished in an instant. Passenger 1, whispering, "That's him?" Passenger 2, "Yeah, the guy she talked down to." Passenger 1, "She's done." Marcus walked calmly toward the cockpit, passing Sophie without even glancing at her. That was worse than yelling. That was power. Quiet, unshakable power. Sophie forced a smile, trying to hide her panic. "Sophie," softly. "Sir, would you like me to—" But Marcus didn't stop. He didn't acknowledge her. The captain personally shook Marcus's hand at the door. The co-pilot followed, their respect loud and clear. The other flight attendants shot Sophie sharp looks, not because they hated her, but because they knew what was coming next. She swallowed hard. "He's not just a passenger. He's the man who owns the skies I work under." And for the first time, Sophie wished she could go back and undo every arrogant word she had spoken. But some mistakes don't get a replay button. Marcus finally turned to face the cabin. His voice was calm, but it carried weight. "Marcus, respect should never depend on the seat number or the color of someone's skin." The cabin was dead silent. Even the engines seemed quieter. Sophie's cheeks burned. Her world had just flipped upside down, and this was just the beginning of the consequences. Sophie stood frozen near the galley, her palms damp and cold. Passengers were whispering, phones were discreetly filming, and she felt as though every eye on the plane had turned into a silent judge. The man she had insulted, Marcus Hill, the CEO, and was now calmly seated again, speaking softly with the captain. His calmness wasn't mercy. It was the kind of silence that came before a storm. "I disrespected the boss, not just any passenger," she thought, her throat tightening. She replayed the scene in her mind over and over, her dismissive tone, the way she'd rolled her eyes, the way he had quietly endured it. and now the entire world seemed to know. Passenger 1, whispering. She acted like she owned the plane. Passenger 2, and he actually does. Passenger 3, karma's fast these days. Her fellow attendant, Megan, approached cautiously. Megan whispering, Sophie, this is bad, like, really bad. Sophie, shaking. I didn't know who he was. Megan, it shouldn't matter who he was. Those words hit harder than she expected. Megan was right, she hadn't been rude because she didn't know him. She had been rude because of the color of his skin and her own ugly assumptions. A crew supervisor appeared from the cockpit and signaled her to step aside. Her heartbeat pounded in her ears. Supervisor. Sophie, Mr. Hill has requested not to be disturbed for the rest of the flight. Captain wants you off duty for now. Sophie, trembling. Off duty? Supervisor. Yes, sit in the jump seat. No service. No contact with passengers. That was the polite way of saying, you're done here. She sank into the cold jump seat, the uniform she once wore with pride now feeling like a heavy chain. The other attendants worked around her without a word. Every laugh she heard from the passengers felt like it was aimed at her. Every whisper sounded like racist. For the first time, Sophie wasn't in control. For the first time, her arrogance meant nothing, and miles above the ground, regret weighed heavier than gravity itself. The plane landed at JFK with a mechanical groan. Sophie felt every vibration of the runway rattle through her bones. Normally, landing meant relief, routine control, order. This time, it was a slow, dragging walk toward consequences. The captain's voice came through the PA, firm and rehearsed. Cabin crew, prepare doors for arrival and cross-check. Her body moved on autopilot. Her mind didn't. When the passengers stood to leave, their eyes flicked toward her, not out of politeness but with a silent kind of disgust. Some avoided eye contact. Others didn't bother hiding their smirks. Marcus walked out last. His steps were unhurried, but each one felt like a verdict. He didn't look at her. He didn't need to. His silence was louder than anything she could have said. Passenger, muttering to another. She thought he was just another guy. Response, and he owns the airline. She kept her gaze locked on the ground. Minutes later, in the crew lounge, the supervisor handed her an envelope.
Corporate seal.
HR directive. Supervisor. You're to report to headquarters tomorrow at 9:00 a.m. Don't come in uniform. That single line said everything. Inside the envelope, a suspension notice, pending investigation, attached, a passenger complaint log, an internal crew statement, and, worst of all, a legal memo with Marcus Hill's name on it. Mr. Hill has expressed no personal complaint at this time, but the incident has been escalated to corporate. His silence wasn't mercy. It was strategy. She sat alone on the metal bench, staring at the letter. All her years of service, all the good flights, all the carefully built seniority, worthless now. Megan passed by without a word. Pity sat heavy in her eyes. Sophie crushed the letter in her fist, but it didn't change what it said. Her arrogance had written a story. Corporate was about to finish it for her.